Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ronnie Bowie. It's my privilege to be Chair of Court of the University of Dundee and my pleasure to welcome you all here today to this, our third annual stakeholder meeting. We want this event to be as accessible as possible. Throughout, there will be subtitles, and if you want to know how to access the subtitles, please go to the Q&A box on your screens. And for those not familiar with Teams, that's a speech bubble with a question mark in the middle of it. These annual stakeholder meetings give us, as the University Court, the opportunity to reach out to our stakeholders, and we wish to do so as widely as possible. So today, whether you're a member of staff, a student, one of our distinguished alumni, a representative of one of our collaborative partnerships, one of our local politicians, or whether you're just a member of the public who has a keen interest in the success of the university, you are all very welcome. This is the curtain raiser for the Discovery Days, which will take place tomorrow and on Friday. And I would encourage you to take advantage of this fantastic showcase of the work of the university. It's available live online, but also available in recorded version later. Every year, it's a fantastic display of the great work that we're doing locally and globally. The format of today is firstly to have 3 pre-recorded sessions. So in this 3-course meal, I will start and then I'll come back to introduce our new Principal and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Iain Gillespie. And then dessert will be provided by Scott Quinn, President of the Dundee University Students Association, DUSA for short. And then we'll have questions, which again will come through the Q&A facility, and we should be done by 4:30. Just a couple of other housekeeping points. The event's being recorded and it'll be available on the university's YouTube channel later. So if you've enjoyed it so much today that you want to see it all again, that facility is available. And we do want as many questions from you as possible. There is a lot going on in higher education generally and in the University of Dundee in particular. So please submit those questions again using the question and answer facility, the speech bubble with the question mark in the middle. We will do some filtering of the questions, so if we get 3 or 4 questions on the same topic, we'll try and consolidate them into a single question, and we will try to get through them all. If we fail to do that, we will try and make sure that we get the answers to your questions to you somehow after the event. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to me to open the first of the 3-course meal. Thank you. I want to spend the majority of my allotted slot talking about what Court has been doing and saying something about the way ahead. But before that, and in particular for those of you who haven't attended one of these meetings before, let me just take a couple of slides to explain who is on Court and what is it that where do we fit within the governance ecostructure of the university. So here's a set of pictures of the 25 members of Court and a pie chart showing what our background is. For this purpose, all the segments tinted red come from staff constituencies, whether it be Senate, trade unions or others. Yellow are the 2 very important student members of Court, and the blue represents what we call the lay members. People who are not members of staff, may have had no previous connection with the university, but bring a combination of commercial, legal, government, third sector and other backgrounds. The result of which is that we have a really broad, deep, rich mixture of skills and backgrounds on Court. And in that respect, we're very diverse. We're similarly diverse in terms of gender, where just over half the Court members are female, so well ahead of government requirements. And therefore, so far so good on diversity. But we want to go further. the university community itself is really diverse, with around a quarter of our staff members, for example, having been born outside of the UK. And we're committed over the next few years to making the court reflective of that rich diversity within the university community. So for those of you watching who come from backgrounds that would add to that diversity, please do think about the possibility of joining court at some time in the future. In 2022, we'll have another vacancy, which will be the vacancy for my successor. This is an elected post. It's a process that takes some time. But again, I would encourage anybody who's on this call to have a think about whether they might contemplate standing to become my successor from the summer of 2022. So that's who we are. What have we been, how do we fit within the governance eco-structure? This graph shows the key components of that governance eco-structure. Court is ultimately responsible for everything that goes on within the university, but clearly we cannot do that alone. So on academic matters, we are highly dependent on and generally will defer to Senate. We cannot carry out all the operational activities, and so those are delegated to the University Executive Group led by the Principal, who's also a member of Court, and they in turn cascade the operational requirements through the schools and the directorates. And I've put DUSA on the chart as well, because although DUSA is an independent charity, we regard them as partners in this effort and among our most important partners. Court's focus is on governance and strategy, and operational effectiveness is carried out through the UEG, the executive group. But we as Court need to have oversight of that, because the plans that we approve need to be carried out as we expected them to, and the outcomes that we expected need to be delivered. So a lot of our time is spent overseeing the progress that's being made on the implementation of those operational plans. And if we look at the activities of Court over the last year, and for this purposes, we're talking in the main about the financial year to the end of July 2020, we see that some of the major activity falls neatly into those three buckets of governance, strategy, and operations. I won't say much about governance, save to say that we pride ourselves on being one of the best governed universities in the UK. On strategy, as I'll talk about in a few moments, financial sustainability and academic excellence have been to the fore. But we've also spent time reflecting on some initiatives we kicked off 2 years ago to further improve the relationship and the effectiveness of that partnership between students and the university. And I know Scott is going to talk to some of that later. And although there wasn't a huge amount of good news in 2020, we did get an excellent Christmas present in the formal signing of the Tay Cities deal, with the initial investment being in the biomedical cluster, which we believe will be of great benefit to the university, to our local community, and to society more broadly. On operational effectiveness, COVID obviously loomed large throughout the year, but it was important that we also made sure that we looked beyond COVID. And so in September, we approved a series of executive objectives, including a refreshment of our digital strategy, something that COVID has shown to be completely necessary. So it's been a busy year, and I want to pay tribute to Court. Although most of our meetings in the calendar year 2020 were virtual, we met far more often than before. Court members are unpaid, they give of their time voluntarily, and I could not have asked for more commitment and dedication from Court members than they gave last year. So thank you to all of you. If you were at this meeting last year, you'll have heard me talk about the general fragility of the funding model for Scottish universities, where if we think of our activities in three buckets, teaching, research, and other, we find ourselves that the first two make losses. The funding from Scottish Government doesn't cover the cost of teaching Scottish students. Very rarely do we get research grants or research funding that fully covers the cost of research. So our two major areas of activity are underfunded, which means that we have to cross-subsidise those through a combination of recruiting international students, other fee-paying students, and commercial activities such as halls of residence, catering, etc. So it is an inherently unstable structure, and it is made worse in Dundee by the proportion of research that we do. So of universities in the UK, we're in the top half dozen for research concentration. So the importance on that cross-subsidy for us is greater than any other Scottish university. That is something that we had resolved to do something about, and this graph is one that I showed last year. The solid lines show items that had already happened, and the dotted lines show projections of where we intended the future to be. And you don't need to be a financial wizard to see that the orange line, which is expenditure, had exceeded the blue line, which is income, throughout the previous 5 years, and that would be an unsustainable position. So we had targeted to control our expenses and increase our income, as a result of which we were targeting a break even in 2023-24 and a surplus thereafter. And we had good plans to support that ambition. And then COVID happened. And you can see on this chart what that's done to the numbers. And remember, this is only the year to July. Were we to plot the figures to the end of December, they would be worse, because this effectively only has 4 months of COVID in it, whereas we've now endured 9 months of COVID. And you'll see a couple of things. Firstly, that the lines have fallen, as a result of which we're not in the place that we hope to be. And secondly, rather than narrowing, the gap between the lines has expanded. So we have reset our plans, and we have concluded that although we anticipate that COVID will eventually be conquered and that some normality will return, we cannot bank on the number of international students that we had been projecting actually turning up. So we've made more modest projections of that. We also recognise that if that is the case, we cannot project such rapid growth in research activity. So again, we have scaled down our ambitions in that regard. And the resultant projections are as shown here. You'll see that we continue to aim to reach break even in around 2023, but the gradients of both lines are flatter. We have more modest ambitions in terms of the overall size of the university. It's more important that we do things that produce financial sustainability and academic excellence. And you might say, gosh, you've been running a loss for a long time. Why don't you aim for a crossover earlier than you're actually doing? And the answer is that there has to be a balance. We only want to do things that are in the long-term interests of the university. We could do a slash and burn activity on expenses, but that would be to the long-term detriment of the university. So we prefer instead to use up some more reserves, but reach a more sustainable combination of financial sustainability and academic excellence. But lest you think that this is in some way a massive scaling back of our ambition, let me show you this chart, which shows you where we expect the positive outcomes to come from. This is a projection of each of the next 5 years. Orange is growth, blue is cost savings or efficiencies, and grey is as yet unattributed. We're relaxed about whether they come from growth or from savings. And you'll see that the vast majority of the future improvement in our financial position is expected to come from growth. We remain hungry for success, hungry for growth, hungry for spreading our wings and our impact on society still further. At the moment, there's a consultation going on about some changes in 3 of our schools. I know there is a lot of anxiety, understandably, in those schools, and a concern that somehow those 3 schools are expected to bear the entire brunt of improving our financial position. This graph shows you that that is not the case. Growth is still the predominant way forward, and cost savings are only a small part of the total. I make no apologies for spending so much time on finances, because although we would much prefer to concentrate on academic excellence and impacting society, if we are not financially sustainable, none of that will be possible. So to give this a summary report card, in respect of our 3 pillars of excellent teaching, world-class research, and a brilliant student experience, the whole university community has risen to the challenge and have provided us with teaching, research, and a student experience that is beyond all reasonable expectations. So thank you for that. As we've spent some time looking at, our financial position is fragile, but we have a clear, sustainable way forward and plans to back it up. And as a result, I remain optimistic, not just about the clarity of the plans, but also because of the university's values, which have been tested for a variety of reasons over the last couple of years, but have shown through shiningly. We're clear about where we're going to go, and we build on a strong foundation of excellence, and those are qualities that will sustain us through the next several years. I want to close this part with a huge vote of thanks to the whole university community. On these pictures, I've shown 3 examples of the magnificent response. In the top right-hand corner, the ability to throw up a rapid testing centre in the sports complex within a week of being instructed so to do. In the bottom right-hand side, the work that's been done to create spaces which allow contemplative study, but also offer an opportunity for a degree of social interaction in the library and in the newly purposed Students' Union. And then lastly, in the bottom left, there were around 500 students who, for various reasons, had to remain in Dundee over Christmas and New Year. And we are all in debt to all the volunteers, students and staff alike, who turned out to help serve meals and make that holiday period as convivial as it could possibly be. I am so grateful to everyone who participated in all those efforts. In that context, it might be invidious to single out an individual, but I am going to take that risk and single out Professor David Maguire, our interim principal. David joined us on the 1st of February in what were already difficult circumstances, given the nature of the departure of our previous principal. And within a month, David was faced with all that COVID has brought. But David already had a decade behind him as a successful Vice-Chancellor at the University of Greenwich, and prior to that, in the private sector, was a world authority on digital matters. As it turned out, he was exactly the right person for the time. He has led the university over those 11 months with a quiet humility, but a clear sense of purpose and dedication. And he leaves the university, perversely, given all that's happened through COVID, in a stronger position than we were when he joined. And he has created a really solid platform on which we can welcome our new Principal and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Iain Gillespie. It would seem slightly perverse to thank me for that presentation, so I will pass on that. Before I introduce Professor Iain Gillespie, our new Principal and Vice-Chancellor, I realised when I was watching that yesterday to check it over that I had made a careless and discourteous omission from that, because one of our court members, David Dorward, received an honour in the New Year's Honours list for for services to families and to children. And many of you who are on this call who live locally to Dundee will know of David's great work, not only as the former Chief Executive of Dundee City Council, but also as the founder and the driver behind the fantastic Dundee Bairns project. So on behalf, David, on behalf of all of Court and the university community, many well-deserved congratulations on that honour. We're delighted for you. As has been the case not only in university life, but in our personal lives, and the last year has had all sorts of things in it that we've never had before. One of them is that we recruited our new principal and Vice-Chancellor through an intensive 6-month interview and selection process without ever having met him in the flesh. And I'm grateful to Professor Iain Gillespie for his patience and his tolerance as we came to terms with this most unusual precedent. But subsequently, of course, we have met Iain. We are thrilled to have him on board and very excited about what he will bring to the University of Dundee. So with that, over to Iain.
Hello, I'm Iain Gillespie, your new principal. And I'm new. This is day 5 that I'm recording this message to you. And it's wonderful to be here in Dundee. Of course, I'm not actually here in Dundee, as you can see. I'm at home. I'm at home like so many other people in our country at the moment as we try and deal with this renaissance of a new variant of COVID. I think we all went into our Christmas break hoping and believing that we would come back to a slightly different environment with progressive opening up again of our economy, back to work, back to school, students increasingly on campus, and the rollout of new vaccines. And some of that, of course, is true. We now have licensed 3 vaccines in the UK, and that is truly world leading. I think our colleagues are doing an amazing job in developing vaccines for this terrible pandemic. And Dundee, I'm so delighted to see, has played an incredibly important part in that and continues to play a very important part in it. Nevertheless, COVID is a real threat. It's a huge scourge for all of us at the moment. Ask anyone in the NHS, take a look at the videos online, and were you able to, and please don't do this, were you able to, you could look at Ninewells and look at the repurposing that's going on there to ensure that we have effective ICU treatment for the many, many patients that regrettably are presenting themselves. So we have to deal with the COVID pandemic. It's not what any of us wanted. We hoped that we would recharge our batteries and come back refreshed for an uplift in 2021. Some people have talked about cancelling their subscription to 2021, but I think there is a much brighter future in front of us as our colleagues wrestle with containment of this virus and indeed with treatment and therapy for it. But a key message, and let me start with this, is stay at home if you can. That's a way to prevent the spread of this disease and let us get a grip on it. But you don't want to hear me just talk about COVID. I'm a new principal, and so I come in, of course, with a range of ideas, with huge enthusiasm for Dundee, even though physically it's difficult to be amongst you all. That will change very soon, I believe. What I want to do today is spend a little bit of time telling you about myself. So you've got an idea who this new guy, Iain Gillespie, is, what his background is. Say something about our university, where we are, where we've been, and most importantly, and what you're all tuning in to hear is where I see us going in the future. So let me begin then with a little bit about me. Well, I'm an East Coast Scots boy. I come from Leith, a little bit south of Dundee, but in many ways a great deal of similarity. Like many principals of Scottish universities, I'm the first in my family to have gone to a university. And I'm very proud of that. My own background is my father was a distillery cooper. He made barrels with his hands in the port of Leith. And it was impossible for him to imagine that a son of his could ever do the kinds of things that I do today, be involved in the kinds of issues that I'm involved in. And why is it that we've been able to achieve so much? And the short answer is because of two things. One is a loving and caring family with my siblings looking after me. They were all much older than I am, but spent a great deal of time looking after me. Parents, loving parents looking after me. But really a university education was the key to everything that I've been able to do in my career. And I've had a very varied career. I've spent a great deal of time in government, in UK central government, in international government, in a UK funding agency, in various universities, even for a while in a biotech company. And what's driven me through all of that is a real focus on making a difference through science, making a difference through research and through education. By background, I'm an environmental microbiologist, and when I was at university, I enjoyed myself just as much as I hope all students can. It's tough for our students in COVID times to have the university experience that many of us had, and we all have to come together to try and offer that most supportive, most enjoyable, most mind-opening opportunity that we all had when we were at university. I entered fully into university life, and I hope that everyone, particularly our students now, continue to do that. In terms of my achievements, well, I suppose the thing which has driven me most is that application of environmental microbiology into environmental science, and particularly around the development of a bioeconomy. The notions, the political idea of a bioeconomy is a means that we can pull together the latent value in biological materials, biological organisms and their processes for the betterment of a sustainable future. And that's a theme which I think is growing increasingly in popularity today. In fact, Prince Charles has just announced a new pact, a new terra carta, a new contract for the environment. And I think the bioeconomy is at the core of that. And it's something that Dundee has incredibly championed. Why would I not want to come to Dundee? It's a university with biosciences at its heart, and also making a difference at its heart. And truly, the values of Dundee, the values of our university, of our city, of all of our colleagues, of all of you as stakeholders, of making a difference, of working together in one Dundee, that's what makes us truly fantastic and truly great. Of course, we have some challenges as well as opportunities. The significant challenges we have at the moment are well known, and others we'll talk about. I will too. We've been living beyond our means for the last few years. Simply put, we have spent more than we earn. Any homemaker can tell you that that is not a sustainable situation, that it's not a way that we can continue to live and prosper. We could borrow, but we can only borrow in order to improve a situation, not to bail ourselves out of one. We could look for help from our friends and relatives. In our case, it's the Scottish Government and elsewhere, and they can help, but help is not the same as putting oneself on a sustainable footing where we're masters, where we're in control of our own destiny, our own future. And that's what we must be. And we clearly need to get to a point of financial sustainability, not just balancing the books in 1 year, but true financial sustainability, so we can create the headroom to invest and deliver on our future academic excellence. And I think there's a great deal that's been going on already in the university to move us towards financial sustainability, but we are the beginning of a journey, and we must be determined to continue to deliver on that going forward over the next few years. Our academic excellence and our structure will help us get there. academic excellence and financial sustainability, for me, very much are two sides of the same coin. They are mutually reinforcing one of another. Strong academic excellence will deliver financial sustainability. Financial sustainability will deliver strong academic excellence, or at least enable it. To deliver that academic excellence that I've talked about, again, we have beginnings of processes in place to deliver that, and many of you will be familiar with the beginnings of these processes. We must take that process very seriously. We must design it, we must deliver it and enact it and live it together as one Dundee. It is our process for our academic excellence, for all of us together. And I'm confident that over the coming months and years, we will work towards ensuring that academic excellence, building on the great strengths we already have. We are a triple intensive university. We have outstanding research excellence, and I'm looking forward to the outcome of the forthcoming REF to show that even more starkly. We have brilliant teaching credibility. We are a top 20 university by any means, top in 2020 for student experience, and that's a very significant accolade that we must hold on to and continue to develop. And also we have amazing outreach to our partners. We are a university not just of Dundee, we're a university for Dundee. So that triple intensity of strong research, leading teaching, and of real engagement with our community must continue to be the focus of who we are as a University of Dundee, a truly triple intensive, world-leading university. To maintain that situation with world-leading research, outstanding teaching, and great engagement, we have to make some difficult choices. We have to make some points of focus. We have to concentrate on areas that we're either good at now and maintain it, or strengthen areas so that we are really delivering at the top of our game across the entirety of our operation. And I have absolute confidence that we will do that. We will continue to do what we are strong at, for example, in life sciences, in art and design, a range of other areas, and also build on things that we're investing in, like a renaissance of a School of Business. I think in going forward, we must ensure that we really deliver on our partnership ambitions. We have great opportunities around the V&A Dundee, around the renaissance of our city, on the Riverside development, and in partnerships with NHS Tayside, with the city more generally, and with our citizens and beyond. We must grasp these opportunities for partnerships so that we can give the best chance for our students to engage and want to come here and make Dundee a really attractive place to land. All of that is a continuation of the DNA that represents our university. Finally, I want to pick up on a couple of areas that I'm particularly passionate about, that Dundee's already got some real strengths in, but I think we could do even more. The first is the widening participation and inclusion piece. As a university, we've done amazing things in widening participation. We are a leader in Scotland. I think we need to do even more. As we exit COVID, the inequality in our society has really come across very starkly. And together with our partners, we must grasp a chance to give others the opportunity of a university education, to really enable them to give of their best in our society. And the environment is something that I am deeply passionate about. As an ex-director of the Natural Environment Research Centre, spending time in Antarctica, I'm very aware myself of the impacts of humankind on climate change, biodiversity, polar ice cap melting, and the rest. And I believe we can be a global leader around environment sustainability in terms of the operation of our own university and of the science, the research, and the teaching and the student engagement that we bring. There's huge demand for this, and it is absolutely an issue of today. So, friends, colleagues, I think we have an amazing future in front of us as a university. We must take some difficult decisions. We must stay focused. We must be clear on who we are, a truly world-leading, triple intensive university. And we must continue to celebrate on our values of what we've been through COVID, where we've come together, where we've worked together as one Dundee, where we are very focused on that change, that delivery agenda. I know how difficult this has been for everyone. I know how hard COVID continues to be. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone for all of your contributions. Going forward, we'll build on that, we'll dig into our resilience, we will stop doing some of the things that we shouldn't be doing, and we will focus on being truly great. One Dundee, a university of Dundee and a university for Dundee. I look forward to meeting you all and hearing about your work as we go forward together.
Thank you, Iain. Next up is Scott Quinn, President of DUSA, the Students' Association. I mentioned in my pre-recorded piece how grateful we are to the whole of university community, including DUSA, for the support that they gave, for example, over the Christmas and New Year periods when a lot of students were stuck on campus, not always through their own choosing. But DUSA's contribution to the effort, working closely with our own Student Services Department, started even before term began, just rising incredibly well to produce what, by many reckonings, was the very best virtual Freshers' Week of any university across the UK. DUSA, as Scott will say, has regularly won awards for being the best students association in the country, and I cannot overstate the contribution that Scott and our independent student members have made to the court. We are never unsighted on the student voice, something that not all courts are able to say. So it's a great pleasure to hand over to Scott to talk about DUSA and their record of achievement and their ambitions for the remainder of the year.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to speak as part of the Discovery Days. For those of you watching, if you don't know me, my name is Scott Quinn and I'm President of Dundee University Students Association for this academic year. I'm hoping to spend a little bit of time to run through the key areas of work that we as a Students Association do on an annual basis, as well as discuss the impact of COVID-19 and how we responded. I'm conscious that these sort of things do serve better as a discussion rather than a lecture, so I'm hoping to wrap up pretty sharpish and then we can move on to questions. First, I want to give a very brief summary of who we are and what we do. There is a lot of messaging and information out there, and quite often it's quite easy to miss something. In essence, DUSA is a student-led charity, and we are here to improve the student experience at Dundee through things like extracurricular activities, through representing students at a variety of university committees, and overall just making sure that the student voice is heard. To do that, we elect 8 students to make up the DUSA executive and carry out these roles for the academic year. We have 6 full-time officers, including myself, who undertake the role upon graduating or as part of a gap year, and we also have 2 part-time officers who do this alongside their studies. These roles cover everything from student activities and societies, to student representation, to student welfare and academia. Alongside us, there are a number of permanent staff that work to support students too, and then that extends outwards to include things like the campus shops, the bars, the cafes and that sort of thing. When we come into office, each exec team will create a manifesto that outlines their priorities for the year and the areas they want to tackle. For us, there were clear themes that came through from the policies that we ran on during our elections, and these consisted of representation, welfare, communication and engaging communities. We were elected before the impact of COVID was truly understood in the UK, so we tried to strike a balance between collating the issues that we were elected on and then addressing the issues that were caused by COVID-19. I'm going to touch on representation and welfare shortly, but I just wanted to talk you through the remaining themes in our manifesto. For us, communication is an area that we felt DUSA could and still can greatly improve on. At the moment, there is no one-size-fits-all approach that really works. Students are bombarded with emails, social media isn't mandatory or quite professional enough, and updates on teaching platforms, etc. can really be quite difficult to navigate. We are in the process of developing a communication strategy to ensure that we review all the options available to us, both old and new, to see how we can better get our messages across. And then finally, engaging communities is quite a broad area and it covers quite a bit. There is a tendency for home and EU students to engage with DUSA services rather than international students, where that number is a lot lower. In our elections, we see poorer engagement with postgraduate cohort compared to undergrads, and there's an imbalance of the presence of support services on the main campus compared to that of, say, Kirkcaldy and Ninewells. COVID has presented a lot of challenges in how we address these areas, but it is something we are committed to continuing to tackle, and we are planning on addressing these areas in our organisational strategy moving forward. COVID-19 has had an impact on all aspects of our work, but perhaps the most prevalent is the impact on our students' well-being. Uncertainty, quickly changing guidance, and the effects of isolation are having a significant impact on the mental health, and with the new guidance, this is set to continue. Our welfare support has continued throughout the year, and we've made it more accessible online to ensure that many students as possible can access it. We've seen increased engagement with our advice service, and through that, we're able to identify key issues in the student experience and pass that feedback along to the university. We've had to rethink how we plan our campaigns to highlight key issues and raise awareness of the support available. With in-person events not possible, we've had to embrace the new way of working to still deliver where we need to. Alongside our Minds Matter month that you can see on screen, we've delivered campaigns on sex and healthy relationships, Black History Month, academic skills, and our zero tolerance policy this semester. The uncertainty that students feel very much extends to us too. Being made aware of the new guidance at the same time as the students means that we have to strategise and flip our services at a moment's notice, all while figuring out the logistics of the guidance and fielding questions. If we didn't have the ability to work under pressure before COVID, we certainly do now. Arguably more important this year, as a result of COVID-19, student representation and the student voice has been paramount to the work that we've been doing. Everyone from class reps to school presidents to our team have been feeding into the conversations that affect students, and it's important that the partnership between students and the university is maintained and continues to strengthen as we progress into 2021. From our perspective, a key aspect of representation that has been heavily impacted was the elections process this year. Normally, students would be bombarded on campus with free sweets and goodies to encourage them to vote. Naturally, with health guidance in place, this wasn't possible, and campaigning had to be solely online. Interestingly enough, we actually saw better engagement this year with our student council elections than we have in recent years, so there are some positives. The student voice has always been an important part of our community, and this year it has been louder than ever. Positive change is being made to the delivery of education as a result of a number of surveys that were circulated last semester, and I find that really inspiring to see. This year in particular, our usual rulebook has been thrown out, and that dialogue to keep each other right as we move forward is going to be crucial. My last point on representation, I suppose this is my plea to the students that are viewing this. Get involved, use your voice, make your mark. University staff are always willing to have a conversation about issues that you're facing, and there still are vacancies for student representative positions if you'd like to put your name forward. The University of Dundee was ranked #1 internationally for student societies in the International Student Barometer last year, and they're undoubtedly one of the biggest drivers of the student experience at our university. They provide communities for like-minded students and put on stellar events and activities, providing some great experiences for our student body. With COVID-19 regulations affecting social distancing and the numbers of households that can mix, our societies have had to move their activities online, and it's incredible to see the quality of the work that they're doing. We've seen events like virtual concerts, game nights, and even escape rooms put on to still ensure that students are able to thrive, network, and have fun while they study. I'm looking forward to the day when guidance doesn't limit in-person gatherings and we can see societies meet in person again. We are still seeing new societies being created every month, so there is a clear need and want for that social interaction that COVID prevents. So it's on DUSA and the university to deliver that as soon as we're able to. The final area of work I'd really like to touch on is our operations. Our operations team, like the rest of us, have had the challenge of responding to regularly changing guidance. Our strong nighttime activities were suspended back in March, and as a result, we've been pursuing a cafe coffee culture, which is becoming quite successful. As the student body continues to change, more and more students don't drink alcohol, or not to the extent that we see in the Scottish drinking culture. We're hoping that this move to a coffee-orientated atmosphere and perception will make DUSA more welcoming to the students that don't normally interact with us. And I'm pleased to say it's working. Through this and the higher quality food that we're offering means that we're seeing more people interact with us, which then gives us opportunities to promote our societies and our support provision too. Something I'm really proud of is the way that the DUSA executive team this year have partnered with student services and DUSA's operations and all rallied together to support students during these unprecedented times. And we've been offering food packs to students that have been self-isolating, and then we've been doing in-person welfare checks in the university accommodation. It's a real testament to what we can achieve when our community rallies together. So I'm hoping to wrap up this presentation with a couple of positive points about the future. Over the last few months, DUSA has seen a completely new senior management team come into post. This fresh blood means we're able to take on new challenges with a completely different perspective. And from someone that's been involved with DUSA for a few years now, it's a breath of fresh air and it's been a long time coming. As part of this, we'll be creating and working towards a 5-year strategy that will see us get to new heights and accomplish even more. We're in the initial stages of creating this, and at the moment, we're actually reviewing our governance structures, including the role of the executive and the remits of our student support staff, to make sure that they're relevant to students in 2021 and in a hopefully post-COVID world. So I'm going to wrap up there and I'm going to open up to questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Scott. So we're on to questions now, and thank you, lots of you who've posted questions. We'll have to go at this at a lick to get all the way through them. And I will call on Iain and Scott to help me answer them, and Scott and Iain may in turn ask for a bit of help from some of their colleagues. So bear with us. This is a complicated medium through which to do all of this, but we will do our best. So one of the early questions was in response to what I said at the beginning, that we aspire to be one of the best governed, if not the best governed university in the whole of the UK. And the reasonable response to that from the floor was, well, how do you measure how close you are to achieving your goal? And maybe the first thing I should say, well, firstly to say, what is governance? It means that a framework for decision making and a set of behaviours that mean that the university adheres to its values and that the right decisions are taken in the right place with the right information by the right people, and that there is appropriate scrutiny of all of those decisions. We aim to be so I guess our means of testing that is twofold. Firstly, we benchmark ourselves, so there is an ever-growing number of codes, whether specifically for HE and whether specifically for HE in Scotland, higher education in Scotland, or the whole of the UK. There are public sector codes, the 9 principles of public life, and also there are a number of private sector codes. And at our Governance and Nomination Committee, each time there is a new code or a revision of code from whichever aspect it comes, we test ourselves. And to give you an example of that, there has just been a recent UK code with which we compared ourselves, and we were able, despite a very strong element of self-criticism, we were able to vote ourselves green on almost all of them. But the one where we felt that we hadn't fully matched the benchmark was in the question of engaging our local stakeholders. Although we take this meeting very seriously, we recognise that we could do more to link into the City Council, into the other local authorities, which are effectively our catchment area within Scotland, to Scottish Government and to UK Government, as well as a number of other important global stakeholders. So we are resolved to do better on that, and we would welcome engagement from all of those partners. On the values piece, and I'll answer one of the other questions in this, we believe that it was our values that drove us to reach a parting with our previous principal, and it's been in the papers, and most of you will know some of the reasons for it. That was not a trivial matter, but one which I'm very proud that we stood tall and behaved in accordance with our values. And it gives me no pleasure, but we can look not many miles to the northeast and find a university that is really struggling with those values. To answer a question later on about the principal, the former principal, and the financial payoff, part of our values was that given the circumstances of his departure, we would pay no more than contractual entitlement, which is what we did. And we worked in close consultation with the Scottish Funding Council to make sure that they understood that we were paying not a penny more than the contractual entitlement. So that's how I would judge how we're doing on governance. But we're never complacent, and there's always more that we can do. I'm going to hand over to Iain Gillespie for a couple of questions. One, there are a large number of questions about the consultation on the 3 schools. So Iain, I'll leave you to try and give an omnibus answer to as many of those as possible. And then if, having done that, you wouldn't mind answering the question about the Tay Cities deal and what it's likely to mean for the university and for the city.
It's fantastic to be here and a great opportunity to engage with stakeholders around the university in this session. So let me pick up first of all on our thinking around academic excellence and structure. I think the absolute first thing to say is that, as I said in my recorded comments, we are a world-leading research intensive, triple intensive university. And that's fact, and that's what Dundee's been for a long time. And that's a future that we need to continue to deliver at the University of Dundee. So like any university that thinks it's world-leading and triple intensive, we need to ensure that our academic excellence continues to be fit for purpose. And even if we were in a situation where our finances were very strong and we had a great deal of money in the bank, we would still need to continue to evolve and ensure the delivery of academic excellence. So our academic excellence and structure proposals are, for me, primarily about maintaining and delivering on that academic excellence. And academic excellence will help us address the financial sustainability question. And as I said earlier, financial sustainability enables academic excellence. So from the get-go, can I say very, very clearly that what we are looking to do is to deliver academic excellence and create that crossover point that Ronnie illustrated on delivery of long-term financial sustainability. The second thing to say is that this is a process. We have a process for academic excellence and structure, which has a number of elements to it, one of which is a proposal for bringing 3 schools into one, under the working title, and we'll see what this becomes in the future, under the working title of a Walker Geddes School. Now, this is a proposal that's been discussed at some length by a number of colleagues in the university over the last few months. And what we've done now is we've put this on the table as a proposal to consult on and to discuss with staff and with students around the university. And we are in the process of that consultation period right now. We had a number of town hall meetings prior to the end of the year, and we are now in the midst of a series of quite in-depth discussions about how one delivers on that academic excellence, the nitty-gritty of the details that are in the proposal. But I continue to use that word proposal because that's what it is. It's a proposed way of delivering academic excellence. And we need to get to a point, we need to get to a point in the next few months so that we can launch a new shape for our work around social science, humanities and education, which delivers on our market opportunities and delivers academic excellence and creates some cost savings. And in creating these cost savings and reducing our cost base, my intention absolutely is to ensure that in doing that, we create headroom to invest so that we can deliver on future academic excellence. But it will be a smaller endeavour than it is at the moment in order for us to take out some of these financial savings. As I say, it's a process. It's a process which we are in the midst of. We do not have a preconceived answer. What we've got are some ideas, and we are at the moment discussing these and consulting on them, and we will develop them as we go through the next few weeks. But what can't change is that we must deliver on the outcomes that we require in order for us to get to the financial sustainability that Ronnie has so eloquently outlined, and also to deliver on academic excellence. I've been asked the question, can I rule out compulsory redundancies? Well, let me be very open and very frank about this. Of course, the university has a tried and tested policy around avoiding redundancies, and we will absolutely work with that redundancy avoidance policy. At the end of the day, we will do everything we can to avoid compulsory redundancies. I don't want to see compulsory redundancies, but not wanting to isn't necessarily a guarantee that this will not be done. So on the direct question of can I guarantee there will be no compulsory redundancies as a consequence of reshaping our university for future academic excellence and financial sustainability, I cannot give that assurance. And it would be inappropriate of me as principal to give such an assurance. But we will do everything we possibly can to avoid that. Happy to take other questions on academic excellence and structure if they come up, but in a nutshell, that's where we are at the moment. We're in a process, and we must co-design that process. We must co-deliver that process, but it must deliver on the outcomes that I suggested. Let me turn now to the Tay Cities deal. Tay Cities deal, well, it's been a long time in the coming. Fantastic, it's finally been signed. As the first steps in the Tay Cities deal for us are about a bioscience incubator. And a bioscience incubator can do really significant things for our university. It can improve the impact of our research, and that translates into money. It translates into money through the Scottish Ref equivalent. We can create opportunities for our students in working with partner firms, in creating, being involved in creating their own spin-outs and their own entrepreneurial activities. We can create opportunities for employment in the city and for bringing a cluster effect around external investment into our city. There are a long list of things that we can do around the bioscience incubator, building on a really strong bioscience background already. And indeed, we can create some financial headroom for ourselves through enhanced commercialization activities. So this is a good deal, a good thing for Dundee as a city. It's a great thing for our students, and it's an excellent thing both for our research and our bottom line. And the final point, just to pick up on, around ambition for relationship with the city. Well, I said it in the introductory remarks. One of the things that's really attracted me here is how proud Dundee is of its university, as indeed the university is of the city, and a strong relationship with NHS Tayside and looking at how we can work with the Scottish Government to get some new investment in upgrading 9 wells, in creating opportunity for growth through the V&A in Dundee, where there's fantastic opportunities for creative clusters, and again bringing in some external investment in upgrading the water side and in delivering health and wealth to the citizens of Dundee. Thanks, Ronnie.
Thank you, Iain. And at least in part, you've responded to a question from Bailey McPherson, one of the Dundee City Council attendees, who had written to both Iain and to me just in advance of this meeting. I said in relation to the question about governance that one of the areas where it's clear we need to work harder is the relationship with our stakeholders, and I know that Iain is keen in very early course to engage with city councillors, and not least so that the council can be better sited on the academic excellence and structure discussions. So we will be the person, we will respond specifically to your letter, but also I know that Iain is intending to reach out to a number of interested city councillors over the near term. There are a series of questions which, broadly speaking, say, well, if we aspire to be so well governed, how come we haven't dealt with the financial issues before now, which is a paraphrase of 2 or 3 of the questions. So let me attend to that. Until I came onto court 7 years ago, and at that time, the presumption was that the awards from the Scottish Financial Council, who channeled Scottish Government funding to us, would keep pace with inflation. And because of the pay scales that the majority of our staff colleagues are on, Dundee's pay bill, even if we don't recruit any more staff and even if we don't promote anybody, our pay bill goes up by about 3% per annum. So the presumption was that the funding would at least keep pace with that. In fact, over the last 10 years, funding has been flat cash. And indeed, it's been exacerbated for reasons that we're only now beginning to get to the bottom of, but appear to be a Scottish Funding Council formula. We have, on average, received grant increases which are 1% per annum less than the average Scottish university. So that alone means that our grant income is about £10 million less than it would have been if we just had the same as everybody else. And you could argue that we were slow to wake up to that formulaic disadvantage. You could argue that we were slow to wake up to the fact that the presumption should no longer be that government funding would keep pace with inflation. And maybe you're right, maybe we were slow to that. 5 years ago, though, we did recognise that our base budget had to work on the basis that it would be flat cash going forward. And that means that we either need to make up the gap through savings or we need to grow that other box even more rapidly. So that's one of the reasons why structurally we are in this difficult position. And I expect that the majority of Scottish universities will be publishing deficits this year. We also made decisions which preferred to follow our values rather than be driven by finances. And the one that's most vivid is we were late to the International Student Party. And that's in part because we had prioritised widening access, which I believe provides a greater social benefit, but comes at a cost. And with hindsight, we should have had a more balanced approach. But we are, of the high calibre research intensive Scottish universities, we are the most inclusive. We have more students proportionally from what regarded as deprived backgrounds than any other university. So we've made some choices which have not helped the financial position, but the principal reason is we've just been running uphill or against the tide. The one bit of our finances that is better than almost everybody else is that we have no debt. A lot of universities have borrowed heavily. We have not, and we would like to borrow, and we would like to borrow. Pre-COVID, we had agreed that we would borrow up to around £50 million to invest in the university, to invest in new courses, to invest in new facilities. But what emerged was that we would not, but we need that money to be lent to us for 20, 30 years so that we can have confidence and that we don't need to it can't all of a sudden be called in. And what's clear is we are not going to be able to achieve that borrowing and make that investment until we have plans, basically those lines that I described, which institutional lenders would believe are coherent. And so if we want to make a leap to invest further in the university, we need to get our house in order. So that is the challenge that we're faced with, and that's part of I hope is part of the explanation why we are where we are. Another question, okay, well, does the governance need to change? And there's another seam of questions for those who have served the university for a long time saying, well, we've had lots of restructure plans and we're still in this pickle. Why should we believe it's different this time? And I do believe that our governance is much improved. So if you think about the 3 school structure, we have said that we as court have said that we are happy for the executive to pursue this consultation, but we have made clear around about 10 conditions that we expect to see satisfied when the next stage of the recommendation comes back to court. And they include cost-benefit analysis, they include equality impact analyses, they include clear evidence that there's been a high quality consultation, that other options have been given a real opportunity to be explored, and so on. If you see the minutes of the court meeting at which we gave that mandate to the executive group, you'll see that it's a very thorough thing. And I think what's different this time compared with 5 years ago is that we will hold the executive to account, and we will only provide our approval to whatever proposals come forward if those conditions are satisfied. And this time next year, the part of this meeting is for us as court to be held account. You will absolutely be within your rights to hold us to account if we have not delivered all that we said that we would deliver. I'm going to give Scott a shot at a question, if I may, Scott. There's a question around drinking culture. There's also a question which I'm going to ask Jim to answer, Jim McGeorge to answer in a minute, about the extent to which we can increase our support for those suffering from mental health. But you might also want to say a little bit about that and the student voice on the question of both student and staff mental health. So drinking culture and mental health, please, Scott, and then I'll hand over to Jim to talk about our ability to increase resources to support those who are suffering.
Yep, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm actually going to pass this question over to Cheryl Cruikshank. She's the new CEO for DUSA. One thing I will say is that having been involved in DUSA for a significant period of time now compared to some other people, the financial model of relying on nightclub activities isn't necessarily the most reliable if we want to continue to improve the support offering for students. And that's definitely something that we're conscious of when we're moving towards that sort of cafe coffee culture that's going to be hopefully more accessible, but I'm sure she can say more on that.
Thanks very much, Scott. Yeah, as Scott said, you know, we have had an over-reliance in the past on the nightclub economy as an organisation. We now have a completely new senior management team, and I have no background in nightclub activity. We need to align our operational activities with our charitable objectives, and one of the key bits of work that I've started to do is to look at what students want and need from us as an organisation. And towards the end of the last calendar year, we had a group of students who did a tribe study for us, a group of marketing students, and what that revealed is that around 20% of the student population like to socialise, and a lot of our activity was focused on that very small proportion of the student body. We want to expand our activities to ensure that we can provide services to a greater number of students in a broader range, and we have had no nighttime economy since March, since before St Patrick's Day. And we've started to develop and transition to an effective, successful cafe coffee culture, which is focusing on the good quality coffee that we sell and improving our food offering and creating safe social spaces for students to come together and increase their individual and collective impact. So, you know, as Scott said before already, since we started semester, we had a small period where we were allowed to serve alcohol. We have changed our model around alcohol. We have developed a terrace, and we have removed our alcohol sales from the pavement cafe, and that's going to be our focus going forward. There will still be a requirement for some students for us to provide alcohol-based activities, but we want to do that as responsibly as possible. So that's part of our strategy. And what I will say to finish is it's important for us as an organisation to be able to do what students want and need from us. So we're keen to engage more widely, and we would welcome any suggestions and all contributions to develop in our next 5-year strategy. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Cheryl-Anne, and welcome to the university. You come at an interesting time. Scott, do you want to say anything about mental health from the student perspective, or are you happy for me to hand over to Jim to respond to the resource question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm happy to say a few words. I think mental health is definitely at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, even more so this year after COVID and everything, that the impact that that's had. One thing I will say is that we need to do more in terms of proactively responding to the mental health needs of students. I think counselling is a huge offering and a fantastic resource, but it is oversubscribed at the best of times. What we need to do is we need to get more resources out there so students can identify the issues that they're having and get the help early on before it gets to that level of receiving counselling. And that's definitely something that we've been pushing with our Vice President of Student Welfare, and it's hopefully something that they'll continue to do.
Thanks, Scott. Hand over to Jim now as University Secretary on the resource point.
Thanks, Ronnie. So yes, very much agree with Scott on that issue about early intervention, and especially about promoting student well-being and working in partnership with DUSA on that issue. So we're working hard through student services to do that. We are fortunate that over the last couple of years, the Scottish Funding Council, via additional funding from the Scottish Government, has enabled us to employ more counselling staff. So whilst those staff are under lots of demand and there is an ever increasing number of students presenting with mental health issues, that team is responding well and doing a fantastic job. In particular, they've responded brilliantly to the challenges around coronavirus and delivering counselling sessions online and over the telephone. So that's worked really well. And there are one or two conditions that students do face, like social anxiety, that have actually reduced under COVID conditions and freed up counselling time for other issues that have become more to the fore. So we have been able to put more resource in this space, and we're working very actively and proactively with DUSA to provide the best possible support that we can for students with mental health difficulties. And if I may, just on the back of that, say, I think the whole student services team in the university, along with many other staff, but particularly in those frontline services dealing with student funding, disability services, the inquiry centre, have done an absolutely outstanding job over the last 12 months in particular through outstandingly difficult circumstances. So a big thank you to them for all the work that they've done.
There's a specific question which I think Carol is best placed to answer about what business transformation has cost us in terms of impairments. While I just get myself organised for some of the other questions. Carol, are you able to answer that?
Yes, certainly. So the impairment figures are reported in our financial statements. So in this year's financial statements, which we will publish in February, we will show a 2 million impairment for the systems implementation, and for the last year in the financial statements that are already published, we showed a 2.5 million impairment for the systems project. Jim may wish to add something further on the whole project, but they're the figures for the impairment.
Thank you. Jim, do you want to say anything about where we're at on the project, which is of keen interest to a lot of staff colleagues?
Yeah, yes, Ronnie, happy to. I mean, the first thing to say is clearly everybody associated with the programme wishes that it had gone more smoothly. None of them more than I do, and I'm sorry that it hasn't. But you know, the reasons primarily have been around our supplier over-promising what it could deliver in this area and actually under-delivering ultimately. We're obviously not the only university or organisation that's seen projects of this type take a bit longer than planned, but we are, notwithstanding the write-offs that Carol's just described, still within the overarching budget that we had available for the project, and we'll continue to work hard to ensure that remains the case. We do have now in place a really good, robust and resilient finance system that's been running for well over a year and is delivering much better financial controls, improved reporting, and has been accessible remotely throughout the whole COVID crisis, and been praised by our external auditors as a result. We're well underway now on testing of the HR payroll system, and the first phase of the research element of the system is going to go live in around a month or so. So lots of progress currently being made, and in accountability terms, the UEG in court has had strong governance oversight throughout of that process. I would say, you know, it's easy to identify an area like BT that hasn't gone particularly well or as well as we'd hoped, and blame that for all our ills and woes, but that's simply not the case. We would still have the kinds of financial challenges that we currently have, whether we were doing business transformation or not. But you know, we're happy that HR and payroll at the moment is moving towards a revised timescale that we'll see it hopefully go live before the end of this current calendar year, and as I say, research will go live in the next month or so.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Iain, earlier on, you said after you'd given an answer to a few of the consultation on the 3 schools project, you said that you would be happy to come back and answer. There's a question has been repeated, I guess, because it was felt that it wasn't fully answered the first time round. It's the second version was at 4:04 p.m. Iain, if you can find it.
Yeah, so let me pick that up and answer head on. There's been a lot of questions, absolutely understandably, around this set of proposals. So let me be as clear as I can be. We have not got to a point of granularity at the moment on which courses might not be offered, or which areas we may continue or not continue. That's a conversation that is ongoing. What we can do is look at some courses where recruitment is small, where the contribution is small, and we can look at areas of academic endeavour where, by a basket of metrics, our performance is not as strong as we would like it to be, where we are not a leading university, but we're a lagging university. What these areas are, you can look at the data as easily as I can look at the data, but we have not got to a point yet where I or anybody else is able to sit and assure you that these are areas X, Y, Z. That's a process which is ongoing now. We will have to get to such a point. And when we get to such a point, then we will take forward the consultations, formal consultations, under our avoidance of redundancy policy. We will look at exactly how we implement a plan. But at the moment, we are constructing a plan. I'm absolutely aware that there are documents around from before which have identified, which have said that there are a number of areas that we could focus on and potentially exit. But that's not the same as having got to a point of having taken decisions yet. We will be transparent in doing that. And as Ronnie has said, Court has asked for a number of test points to be met. And I've asked for a number of test points to be met since I joined the university last week. And I'm looking for, as we all need to see, real clarity on timelines, on critical path, on cost benefit assessments. There's no point in doing any of these things unless we deliver on the academic excellence and unless we deliver on the financial sustainability that we desire. But we will do this as quickly as we reasonably can, but we will take the university along with us as far as we can. At a point, decisions will need to be made, and they will be made together with court. But we are not at the point of these specific concrete decisions yet having been made. Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks. I'm going to, we're getting close to the end of the allotted time, and I'm going to ask you to say something about very forward-looking, big-ticket strategic stuff in a couple of minutes. But I want to pick up a couple of questions, and I know that those who have asked questions on the 3 schools, I think probably aren't satisfied yet with all of the answers. But as Iain has just said, the consultation continues and it is meaningful. And if as court, we would rather have a series of extra court meetings on a different timescale and a different rhythm to those that we normally have, if that is a means of ensuring that we're not asked to make decisions until the consultation is completed in a real high quality way. So we're not going to be slaves to a pre-agreed academic or court calendar. So rest assured that it will be quality over the rigidity of the university calendar. There have been a couple of questions, one about Black Lives Matter and another about making concrete our aspirations on EDI. And I would say 2 things to that. One, to repeat what I said in my recorded piece, is that we recognise as a court that we need to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And we are not yet, as a court, as representative either of the university community or of the society that we wish to be a major force in. So that is absolutely on our agenda as a court, and we, with each passing intake of new court members, we are getting more diverse, but we mustn't take the foot off the gas. We've still got quite a long way to go. And in terms of how does all of that fit into our strategy, we are due during the course of this year for launch next year to refresh our strategy. So questions of whether is it appropriate still to aspire to be Scotland's leading university, whatever that means, and what is the rally, how can we create a rallying call round which people can gather and feel positive about the university rather than being anxious about constant restructuring. All of those things absolutely need to be in that strategy, and that's why we're so excited to have Iain on board to help lead us through that process. But we as a court, you asked questions about what does good governance look like. Good governance looks like living those values, and as a court we need to set an example, and we still, all despite our best endeavours, we still have a long way to go in that regard. Iain, there are questions about our place in the global educational firmament. There are questions around maximising our impact. There are a number of questions about what do we want to look like, and how do people, should people describe us, and what is our contribution to the world. And this is the visionary piece that we are so looking forward to having you engaged with. So how can you whet the audience's appetite today?
Well, thanks, Ronnie. Looking forward, as well as looking at some of the challenges today, is of course what you need a principal to do. So our strategy at the moment, we're coming to the end of the life of the strategy that the university currently has. It runs to 2022, and I've been reading some of the comments on it in the chat as we've been going forward. But there's absolutely no doubt that we need to refresh our strategy. We need to refresh and have clarity around our identity as a university. And simply put, for me, it is world leading, it is triple intensive. We should not aspire to be something that we are not. There are many, many modern universities around that do a wonderful, wonderful job of teaching delivery, but don't have a strong research base. A strong research base, excellent teaching, and real engagement with our partners in the city and beyond have got to be 3 absolute pillars of what we are. as University of Dundee. I'd like to see us in the top 200 universities in the world. At the moment, we're just outside that. Frankly, we belong in the top 200. We clearly need, in my view, to stick to the things that we are good at. And I've referred to some of them around creating a really creative culture around arts and design, the connectivity of a creative culture around arts and design, allying it with biobusiness, biomaterials. The biosciences is an absolute core of what we are as a university, and let's not pretend it's not. It is, and it needs to remain so. We have a School of Business which is going through real redevelopment, and we need to see that School of Business align around our focus and our considerable strengths. When I say we, I mean we, all of us. We need to get behind the strengths of our university and identify what the strengths of our university are and concentrate around them. Can we be Scotland's leading university? Well, it depends what a leading university is. We will lead in the areas that we choose to engage in, but there will be some areas that we do not engage in. And that's part of what the academic excellence work. When we get it right, we'll do. Certainly, we need much more engagement with business. We need much more engagement across stakeholders, with governments at every level in Scotland and beyond, with businesses and with industry around enabling us to deliver a really, really strong market-driven future curriculum. We need to create fantastic opportunities for our students to not just contribute to the university, but to land well. And as I said earlier, I'd really like to see us doing yet more to widen access, particularly as we deal with exit from COVID, which will not last forever. And it's putting incredible strains on us on us right now. But a platform for going forward is consolidating our strengths and building them, creating more connectivity and focus across our strengths, really engaging in a meaningful way with stakeholders, and to continue to deliver a truly outstanding student experience, and addressing the big challenges of the day. Widening access, I say, is one, and we cannot avoid the climate crisis, the environmental crisis, and it is our duty as a world-leading triple intensive university to help address that.
Thank you, Iain. And needless to say that the whole question of formulating our new strategy will itself be the subject of consultation with the university community and our partners. So look out for that process kicking off towards the end of this year. We are out of time, and I recognise that we have not answered a number of the questions. Some, like our friends John McMillan, Anne Swinney and Stuart Cross, have left their names, but others have not. So those of you who have posted your names alongside your questions, we will follow up with you and answer those questions in full outside the meeting. Those of you who have put up questions and haven't given your names, you are welcome to, after the meeting's closed, to post your questions to Dr. Christine Milburn, who's clerk to the court at her university address, and we will then answer the questions outside the meeting, and we will endeavour to make sure that no question remains unanswered. But thank you all for joining. The fact that we've run out of time for questions is, I'm taking as a very positive measure of the engagement that we've had from you. I think I'm not sure how many people there are, but several hundred, far more than we would have in a face-to-face. So it may be that this is a medium that we should continue into the future. But thank you for your interest, and thank you for all those constructive questions. And please, if you are able, join us at the Discovery Days starting tomorrow at 10 o'clock and enjoy the showcase of the work that goes on in this great university. Thank you all, and stay safe.